He speaks, and the ground splits open. The sky tears apart. Fire falls without warning. Water becomes blood. Darkness swallows the sun for days, thick enough to touch, heavy enough to crush breath from the lungs. Cities vanish beneath flood. Mountains smoke and shudder. Entire armies drown in seconds, swallowed by walls of sea, collapsing inward like the closing of a fist. This is not metaphor. This is the consistent portrait of Yahweh across centuries of testimony, ritual, and sacred text. A God whose presence does not comfort. A God whose arrival is preceded by thunder, flame, and the trembling of the earth itself. A God who does not share power, does not negotiate allegiance, and does not tolerate rivals. This is Yahweh, and He is utterly, profoundly intimidating. To understand why requires more than cataloging miracles or counting plagues. It requires stepping into the ancient Near East, a world dense with gods. Every city had a patron deity. Every river, every storm, every harvest had a divine sponsor. Power was pluralistic. Temples stood side by side. Worship was transactional. You honored the god of your land, but you did not deny the gods of others. Divine authority was negotiable, layered, shared across pantheons like territory divided among kings. Yahweh shattered that arrangement. He did not enter this world as one deity among many. He entered as the only one who mattered. The first commandment was not a preference, it was an ultimatum. You shall have no other gods before me. Not a request for priority. The demand for totality. Worship of Yahweh meant the abandonment of every other divine claim. It meant the refusal of Egypt's gods, Canaan's gods, Babylon's gods. It meant rejecting the entire religious ecosystem of the ancient world. This was not normal. This was theological revolution, and it was enforced not through persuasion, but through power so overwhelming that denial became impossible. Yahweh did not argue his supremacy. He demonstrated it. He did not win followers by promise alone. He won them by breaking the nations that opposed him, by dismantling the gods who stood in his way, and by binding his people to him through fear as much as through covenant. His jealousy was not insecurity, it was sovereignty made absolute. And that sovereignty was terrifying because it allowed no escape, no alternative, no negotiation. To worship Yahweh was to submit entirely. To resist him was to face annihilation. The intimidation began not with what he destroyed, but with what he demanded: exclusive devotion, total obedience, unconditional fear. This was the foundation, and everything that followed, every plague, every conquest, every act of judgment was built upon it. The first full revelation of Yahweh's power came not in wilderness or temple, but in Egypt, the most formidable empire of the age. A civilization ruled by gods made visible in stone, sustained by the Nile, protected by divine pharaohs who were themselves considered incarnations of the sacred. Egypt did not fear foreign deities. It absorbed them, reinterpreted them, or ignored them entirely. Its pantheon was ancient, intricate, and absolute. Yahweh dismantled it in 10 strikes. The plagues were not random calamities. They were calculated acts of divine warfare, each one a direct assault on a specific Egyptian god. The Nile turned to blood, rendering Hapi, god of the river, powerless to sustain life. Frogs swarmed from the water, mocking Hecate, goddess of fertility. Darkness covered the land for 3 days, blotting out Ra, the sun god himself, the supreme deity of Egypt's cosmic order. Each plague declared the same message: your gods cannot protect you, your gods cannot answer, your gods are silent because they are nothing. This was not destruction for its own sake. It was theological annihilation. Yahweh was not merely freeing slaves. He was proving that the entire religious foundation of the world's greatest empire was impotent before him. Egypt's priests could not stop the plagues. Its magicians replicated the first few signs, then fell silent. Pharaoh, divine ruler of the Black Land, begged for relief, hardened his heart, begged again. The cycle repeated until the final plague, the death of the firstborn. Every household in Egypt, from the palace to the mud-brick homes of laborers, woke to find their eldest child dead. Not sick, not dying, dead. Pharaoh's own son, the heirs of nobles, the children of soldiers and farmers, gone in a single night. This was not a plague that lingered or spread. It was instantaneous, absolute, and divinely targeted. And the only protection was obedience to Yahweh's command. Blood on the doorposts, a mark of submission. Those who obeyed lived. Those who did not mourned. Egypt broke. But Yahweh was not finished. At the edge of the Red Sea, with the freed Israelites cornered and Pharaoh's army closing in for recapture, the sea split. Walls of water rose and held, defying nature, defying logic. The Israelites walked through on dry ground. And when the Egyptian chariots followed, the waters collapsed.
Horses screamed, men drowned in full armor. The military might of the ancient world vanished beneath the waves in seconds. No battle, no clash of swords, just the sea, obeying a voice. This was the moment Yahweh became undeniable. He was no longer the God of an enslaved people. He was the God who destroyed Egypt, who humiliated its pantheon, who turned the Nile to blood and the sea into a weapon. The Exodus was not just liberation, it was a demonstration of power so total that it redefined what divine authority could mean. And for the people who witnessed it, the message was clear. This God does not lose. This God does not compromise. This God does not need an army, a temple, or even a land. He simply speaks, and empires fall.
After Egypt came the wilderness, and in the wilderness Yahweh did not soften. He established terms. At Mount Sinai, the mountain itself became a boundary of death. The people were commanded to purify themselves, to keep their distance, not to touch even the base of the slope. Anyone who crossed the line, human or animal, would be struck down. For 3 days they waited, and then Yahweh descended. The mountain erupted in fire. Smoke rose like a furnace. Thunder cracked continuously. Lightning split the sky. A sound like a trumpet grew louder and louder until it drowned out thought itself. And then Yahweh spoke. His voice rolled across the camp, audible to every man, woman, and child. He gave the 10 Commandments aloud, directly, without intermediary. The people could not endure it. They begged Moses to stop. They believed that if Yahweh continued speaking, they would die from the sound alone. So Moses ascended into the cloud and smoke, into the presence they could not survive, and received the rest of the law in their place. The covenant was given, but it was given in terror. This was not a contract between equals. It was a binding imposed by overwhelming force. Obedience was not optional. It was survival. And the conquest that followed made that logic brutally clear. When Israel entered Canaan, Yahweh did not send them to negotiate or coexist. He sent them to erase. The command was explicit: destroy completely, leave nothing alive. At Jericho, the walls fell without siege engines, without battering rams. The Israelites marched in silence for 6 days, carrying the Ark of the Covenant. On the 7th day, they circled 7 times. Trumpets sounded, the walls collapsed, and then came the killing. Every person in the city was slaughtered: men, women, children, livestock, everything that breathed. This was herem, the ban, a form of devotion through annihilation. The city and everything in it belonged to Yahweh, and belonging to Yahweh meant total destruction. No plunder, no captives, no survivors. The only things spared were metals, which were melted down and placed in the treasury of the Lord. This was not cruelty for its own sake. It was sacred logic. Yahweh's holiness was so absolute that anything devoted to him had to be removed from human use entirely. To take even a garment from Jericho was to steal from God. And when a man named Achan did exactly that, hiding silver and cloth in his tent, the entire Israelite army was defeated in the next battle. Yahweh's presence withdrew. 36 men died. When the theft was discovered, Achan, his family, his livestock, and all his possessions were taken to a valley and stoned to death, then burned, then buried under a pile of rocks. The sin was not just disobedience, it was contamination, and contamination had to be purged absolutely. Even his name was dangerous. Written in Hebrew as 4 letters, the Tetragrammaton, it became too sacred to speak. To say it aloud was to invoke his presence, and his presence was not safe. The true pronunciation was lost. Only the high priest could speak it once a year, alone in the Holy of Holies. If he was unworthy, he might not leave alive. Proximity to Yahweh meant death. The Ark of the Covenant embodied that same lethal holiness. When the Philistines captured it, their god Dagon was found face down, shattered. Plague followed. They returned it in terror. When a man named Uzzah touched the ark to steady it, he fell dead instantly. The storm was his signature. Thunder was his war drum. Lightning struck like arrows. At Gibeon, hailstones killed more soldiers than swords. The sky was a weapon in his hands. And when judgment came, it was absolute. Sodom and Gomorrah burned. Lot's wife looked back. She became salt. Korah challenged Moses. The ground swallowed them whole. In Egypt, the destroyer killed every firstborn in one night. When Assyria mocked Yahweh, one angel killed 185,000 soldiers by morning. This was sovereignty. He did not negotiate. His will was reality. But something shifted. By the time of the prophets, Yahweh also wept. In Hosea, he aches for reconciliation. In Isaiah, he promises to bind up the brokenhearted. In the New Testament, the God who drowned armies walks the earth as Jesus. He heals lepers, forgives sinners, tells a woman caught in adultery, "Go and sin no more." Same name, same power, but now tempered by mercy. Yet, in Revelation, Jesus returns with eyes like flame and a sword in his mouth. Judgment and mercy remain inseparable. Yahweh is intimidating because he is absolute. His words collapse empires. His presence shatters mountains. When he moves, the world breaks. And yet, the same voice that split the sea now speaks peace. He is terrifying, not because of what he destroys, but because of what he is. Power without limit, holiness without compromise, a God who cannot be controlled or ignored. This is Yahweh, and to know him is to tremble. If you want more untold stories from ancient theology and mythology, subscribe to Mythology. We go deeper than the surface, and we never look away.